866-99 Sirius. As promised, Congressman Anthony Weiner joins us now. Congressman Anthony Weiner from New York. Congressman, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, my friend. How are you?
Fine. It's a pleasure to talk to you. You're a hard man to catch up with. I've been looking for you, but I'm actually glad that we've just hooked up. This is more timely because we're counting on you to tell us exactly what in the world is going on. All these conflicting reports. Is the public option dead? Is it alive? Is there going to be this trigger compromise? What do you know about this, Congressman Weiner?
Well, I know mostly what you've heard. Look, the president on Wednesday is going to give a pretty important speech, and many of us have been running up the hill and fighting in these town hall meetings to explain why we have to do something, explain why, frankly, the present system is dysfunctional for so many people. And for the time being, we've been kind of running up the hill without our general. And so the president is now going to weigh in and tell us what direction he wants this to go. You know, I'm a hockey fan, and every once in a while there are fights on the ice, and the linesman and the ref, they step back, they let the guys flail for a little while, then they step in and get the game started again. Well, we've been flailing through the month of August, and now we need the ref to step in and point us in the right direction. But I can tell you this. If the president steps back dramatically from the idea of a public option, at least, and then as you might and your listeners might know, I'm a firm advocate
Sure.
for the single payer plan.
Yes.
If he steps back from that, then frankly, it's going to be very difficult, I think, not to make it anything but a retreat, because that'll be what it effectively will be.
Yeah, and it's going to be, for most of my audience here, and myself included, of course, we support single payer. Let me go to that point. I have heard that H.R. 676, the Conyers bill, has actually gone ahead to the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, for scoring. Is that true?
That is true.
Now, what does that mean, Congressman Weiner? Does that mean that could somehow or another be renewed back to the table?
676 is going to be voted on the floor of House of Representatives as an alternative to whatever else is out there. When we were considering in the Energy and Commerce Committee the plan that a lot of people are arguing over now, many of us on the committee thought that the concessions made to the insurance companies were too steep and that the public option was weakened too much. That may sound ironic to some of our Fox News friends, but in fact, so much has been done already in concession to the insurance companies that several of us said to the Speaker and said to the Chairman of the committee, unless you give us an opportunity for an up or down vote on what will really fix this problem, which is a single-payer plan, then we're not going to vote to move this bill forward. We got that agreement, and for the first time since the Medicaid Act was passed 44 years ago, we're going to have an opportunity to vote on 676. It might not be exactly what people have on the Internet. We're trying to clean it up. You know, it wasn't written envisioning as actually being voted on by Congress, but basically that framework, single payer, eliminating insurance companies and their profit-taking and high overhead from the mix, giving us control, taking this away from being an employer-based model and making it a similar type of service that any other government service would be. We're going to have a vote on that, and I think support for it's growing every day.
Well, now, Congressman Weiner, we also know that you had introduced something, and I'm glad you did, an amendment that would have abolished Medicare to call for the question on those clowns on the other side of the aisle, and that spoke for itself. I hope the vote on 676 is not symbolic, though. I mean, I'm hoping that the reintroduction or the presence of 676 on the floor would bring some leverage so that somehow we could at least preserve the public option that there's now speculation will die.
Well, first let me say this. I don't want any of your listeners who are unfamiliar with what I did. The offering an amendment to eliminate Medicare was intended for the purpose, and I did it on the 44th anniversary of the Medicare Act being signed into law, to point out the hypocrisy of my Republican friends who stand up and thump the table about how we have to protect Medicare and then loudly curse about the idea of a single-payer plan. You know, a lot of my colleagues are old enough to have care under Medicare. They seem to like a single-payer plan when it's for them, but not when it's for the rest of us. But back to your question, look, the fact is that The public option bill that came out of the Energy and Commerce Committee, that doesn't have a majority vote right now in Congress. 676, we probably don't have a majority right now, but we have just as much a claim to this debate as anyone else. You know, I'm fond of telling people that in many ways, supporters of the public option and opponents are both arguing for a single-payer plan, and I'll tell you what I mean. Opponents of the public option say, "Oh, the competition will be such that citizens by the droves would choose the public option. Essentially, they would choose the lower-cost, more efficient government plan." Supporters of the public option also argue that citizens would choose the public option, and that's why insurance companies would have to lower their prices to compete. Well, in a strange and unintended way, both sides are arguing my position, which is that if the public option is what the American people want, why not cut out the middleman and just give it to them without the bank shot of going through this process?
Right.
So I think support for single payer is growing every day. I think that the more people stand up at town hall meetings and say we need a simpler plan that we understand, I think people understand Medicare, and by and large they like it. That's our single-payer plan that we hope that will be emulated.
What should we do? What can the public do? What can those of us on the ground do? What can even those of us in talk radio? I just learned today, by the way, Congressman, that the RNC has a page on its site mobilizing its supporters to call left and right talk radio for its agenda. We have no such page on the DNC site. That's a whole other thing. From an organizing perspective, we need to clean up on our side.